On November 25th, 1998, a young girl was riding her bike home from her part-time job when a stranger suddenly attacked her and knocking her to the ground. A nearby classmate witnessed the incident and stepped in, scaring the attacker away. To ensure her safety, he offered to escort her home. Trusting him over the risk of another random attack, she accepted. He was polite, spoke kindly, and made her feel at ease. But instead of taking her home, he led her to an abandoned warehouse. 44 days later, a body was found in an oil drum. This video has really dark content. I'm about to talk about and drugs all the time. This video is rated R. Viewer discretion is highly advised. Junko Furuta was a young girl who was born in Misato, Saitama, Japan. Their family had a mother, a father, one old brother, and one young brother. She attended high school in Saitama. Meanwhile, she worked at the part-time at a plastic molding factory after her school, saving money for her graduation trip. Her reason for doing so was quite clear. After graduation, she had planned to work at electronics store. She was the one who was very popular and well liked by her classmates. She got good grades in school, was regular in attendance, and always received a lot of attention. She never did anything wrong, never drank, smoked, or even touched drugs. The local thugs knew that she was pretty naive and innocent girl. Among them was a group of Yakuza wannabes. One of the guys in the group was named Hiroshi Miyano and he had a crush on Junko. He wanted to get physical with her. Hiroshi proposed to her but she immediately refused. Hiroshi was the only one in his school who bullied others and he spent most of his time with younger member of Yakuza. When Hiroshi was rejected, he didn't take it well at all. He felt deeply insulted. How could she reject me? Hiroshi and his Yakuza friends decided to take revenge. They came up with the plan. One of his friends would attack Junko, then Hiroshi would step in to rescue her. By this way, they could gain her trust and making it easier for them to take her wherever they wanted. On 25th November 1998, Junko was riding her bike home from her part-time job when an unknown boy attacked her and knocked her off from her bike. As planned, Hiroshi Miyano was nearby on the street. Seeing the incident, Hiroshi stepped in and scared the attacker away and pretended to save her. Then he offered her to escort her home. In reality, Junko didn't trust Hiroshi, but at the moment, she chose what seemed like the safer option, rather than risking another attack by a random stranger. While escorting her, Hiroshi well behaved and spoke to her kindly and making her feel at ease. Unbeknownst to her, everything was part of his plan. Instead of taking her home, Hiroshi led her to an abandoned warehouse. At the abandoned warehouse, Hiroshi's Yakuza's friends were already waiting. Then he took his time assaulting her. After that, he took her to a hotel where he called his friend Joe Ogura and Yatsushi Wanatabe. From there, things got worse. These three monsters continued their assault on her. It wasn't even something new to them. They had done the same thing to another girl just a week before. The next morning, they took Junko to a nearby park where Joe, Yatsushi and another friend, Nobiharu Miyanto, were already waiting. They had all her personal information, her full address, details of her family. They threatened her by saying that if she tried to escape, they would kill her entire family. With no way out, they dragged her to the Miyanto house and there the nightmare continued. This was the place where for the next 42 days she would be held captive, enduring something beyond words. After 3 days had passed, her family grew worried and filed a police complaint. Her captor had anticipated this, so they forced her to call her family and say, "I'm with my friends and I'm completely safe." They also made her to tell them to stop the police investigation. It didn't take long for her parents to realize that something was wrong. that she was lying under the pressure. To these monsters, Junko had become nothing more than a toy. They beat her every single day and assault her an unimaginable number of times. Hiroshi texted his friend by saying that they had a woman trapped and ready for their personal use, and he invited them to join in. Within the first few days, around 30 men had already assaulted her. Then they brought some woman over to witness the horror. At one point, they took a pin and dode on her face and further degraded her. After just 7 days, Junko had been completely stripped of her humanity. They forced her to remain naked all the time. The constant assault and humiliation never stopped. Whenever they get bored, they would lock her inside a freezer and only taking her out when they wanted to abuse her again. Miyanto's parent and his young brother lived in the same house where Junko was being held captive. His brother did nothing to stop it, but he was once warned that Junko could be killed. As for Miyanto's parents, they couldn't stop their son and his friends because they had already witnessed his violent nature before. Miyanto's family knew that the kidnappers were connected to Yakuza and they were terrified of them. Worse yet, they also feared of losing their reputation, which kept them for intervening. After 10 days of continuous torture, Junko had lost significant amount of blood and could no longer breathe properly through her nose. Her digestive system had completely shut down and her body refused to accept food and water. Whenever she tried to eat, she would immediately vomit. This led to severe dehydration. At night, when the cold wind blew, they forced her to sleep on the balcony and exposing her to the freezing temperature. After some time, Miyanto's brother finally decided to report what was happening to the police. 2 officers arrived at the house to check. However, when Miyanto's parents denied that any girl was there, the officer took their words for it and thanked them and left without even bothering to check for a second. After 20 days of relentless torture, Junko was no longer able to walk. They had poured lighter fuel on her legs and set them on fire, leaving her with severe burns. They had beaten her legs so badly that her muscles were permanently damaged. She couldn't even lift her arms because they had dropped dumbbells on her hands, crushing her bones and shattering her fingernail. After several nights, the captor started to grow paranoid. Junko saw this as a chance to escape. She managed to crawl out of the room and slowly made her way to a telephone. With the last of her strength, she picked up the receiver and tried to call the police. The phone rang. An officer picked up, but just as she was about to speak, Hiroshi rushed in and snatched the phone from her and hung up, casually telling the police that the call was dialed by mistake. Then she dragged her back to the room and of course they were furious. As a punishment, they lit multiple candles and used them to intimidate her. Then they covered her legs and set them on fire. Junko began convulsing and violently shaken from the pain. The captor thought she was faking it, so they set her on fire again. Somehow she barely survived. At this point, she was begging them to kill her, but they didn't even grant that mercy. After 30 days of relentless abuse, she could no longer urinate properly. Her genitals had been severely damaged because they had burned her with the cigarette lighters. They had also inserted various foreign objects into her, many of them sharp and gadget. They even went far as inserting fireworks into her anus, mouth and ears. Her hearing had deteriorated due to the extreme damage to her eardrums. By now, her hands and legs were so destroyed that she couldn't move them anymore. She could only crawl. It took her entire hour to just drag herself to the bathroom. Later, when the report came, it was revealed that by this time, her brain had actually shrunk due to the trauma she endured. Because of deteriorating condition, she no longer seemed to be attractive to them. So, they decided to use the same strategy to target another woman who was on her way home. During these 44 days, No one can possibly imagine what kind of unbearable pain Junko was suffering. Just for your information, this is not new in South Korea. These celebrities did disgust in them and still they are not behind the bars. On day 44, January 1st, she was unable to move and begged them to just kill her. 3 days later, one of the boys challenged her to game of Mahjong Solitaire. Despite of her unbearable condition, she won the game. At respawn, they poured light of fuel over her arms, leg, stomach, and finally her face, and dumped it directly to her eyes. Then they lit candle and set on her fire. She weakly tried to put out the flames, but she no longer had the strength to do so. This torture continued for 2 hours, and finally Junko died. At that moment, the boys began to panic. They quickly came up with the plan. They lift her body and stuff it into an oil drum. Then they fill the drum with concrete. Strangely, some of her hairs remained visible, sticking out from the concrete, but none of them seemed to notice and care. They disposed of the drum at construction site in Koto, Tokyo. Later, police began questioning Hiroshi because he had been accused of gang raping 19-year-old woman. But Hiroshi was confused. He couldn't tell if the officer were referencing to Junko case or another woman case, because in the both instances he had done the same exact thing. Hiroshi assumed that one of his friends had already confessed about Junko, so he ended up revealing everything himself. He realized his mistake, but it was too late. He had already told the police where they hidden her body. Joe Ogura already had been arrested for unrelated sexual assault case. After the further investigation, he was also charged in Junko case. Within few days, the another culprit were also caught. Later, the police finally opened the oil drum. When the Junko parents were informed of the details of what had happened to her, her mother immediately fainted. Due to the immense trauma, she had to admit to the hospital for a long time. Junko's body was sent to an autopsy to determine exactly what happened to her, and small bottles were found inside her rectal cavity. She was also pregnant, and despite her uterus being severely damaged, her face was unrecognizable. She could only identify it through her fingerprints. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, the perpetrators received shockingly light sentences. They were not even charged with the murders. Instead, they were charged with causing bodily injury resulting in death. At the time, Japan's legal system prioritized rehabilitation over the strict punishment. Therefore, Hiroshi was sentenced to just 20 years. Miyanto received sentence to 5 to 7 years. Wanatabe got 9 years. Joe Ogura received 8 years of sentence. By the time this video is uploaded, all of them will have already been released. These monsters were given only 27 and 8 year sentences. At least they got that much of punishment. These monsters are freely moving.